You know, I had no idea how popular this car was until I read through the comments on the last video we did. You guys really seem to love it. And that's good because I really love this thing. And 66, 67 Chargers actually have a very special place in my heart because the very first car I never owned was a green 1966 Charger. Never owned. First car I never owned. All right, so let me explain that one to you. So this is going back to 1977. I was 15 years old. And there was a junkyard on Staten Island called Yacarino's. And I was like the yard rat. Every Saturday morning, I would get on the bus and I would go out there. And it was my paradise. It was like Wonderland. You got to remember, 1977, every kind of muscle car, everything you could think of was in this junkyard. They were just cars. Nobody cared about them. Other kids would go play ball and stuff like that on weekends, and I would go to the junkyard. So I was like the regular yard rat in Yacarino's. They knew me. So one Saturday morning I get there, and there's a green 66 Charger, 361, automatic, roachy, right? Now you remember, the car was 11 years old, but in New York City, even at 11 years old, these things get beat to hell. So I said, oh, I gotta have this, right? I need this car. There's all those bucket seats and the console and the gauges and all of that. I need this car. So I work out a deal with them, and they're gonna let me pay the car off. So they take the car and they put it in a section of the yard where it's not gonna get, you know, parted. Nobody's gonna pull any stuff off of it. And they let me pay them off. So every Saturday morning, I go out there with whatever money I have, $10, $15, $20. I go out there and I give them the money and I go and I work on the car. So I tinker with it, I'm playing with it, and I get it running. I finally get this thing running. And it sounds good, everything's good, the motor's okay. I think the transmission was bad. This is a long time ago, but I'm pretty sure the transmission was bad, like it had no reverse or something like that. So finally, I pay them off, right? I pay them off, and now the car is mine. Never mind, I have no place to put this thing, right? I think I had one of my friend's parents was gonna let me put it in their driveway. My parents were absolutely, they hated cars. They hated me having anything to do with cars. It was a war. My whole childhood was a war with the car thing. So wherever it was going, it was paid off, and now I'm gonna go pick it up. So what happened was they told the guy, one of the yard operators that ran the forklift, to bring the car around. But they didn't tell him that it was like sold as a whole car. They just said, bring the car around. So he goes with the forklift, and I guess for whatever reason, he couldn't get the skids under the car. So he put the skids through the car. He went right through the door, right there, right through the seats, right through the console and everything, and just lifted the car, busted the windows. It was just, he destroyed the car. And this was my first car, right? There was nothing I could do. It wasn't savable. And especially at that point in time, because they really were junk. Nobody wanted these cars. Nobody wanted any muscle cars. Like I said, the junkyards in the 70s were just, if you're a muscle car guy, oh, you just could not imagine what was in there. Because they were just cars. Nobody cared. So that was it. That was the first car I never owned. I bought it, I paid for it, I got it running, but I never actually took possession of the thing. A couple of months later, I guess it was, I ended up buying a 69 Charger that was a stolen, stripped recovery, and I paid $20 for that car. And that was the first one that I actually built. I put a 446 pack together for it, and we'll do another video on that another time. But anyway, like I said, these Chargers, in addition to having that unique, like they're very unique cars. There's really, other than the AMC Marlin with the fastback, I can't really think of any other car that's got the same kind of profile, the same tightness that these early Chargers do. So, on the last video, so we gotta go through some of the comments, and actually I gotta make a correction on something, because I said in the last video that I was thrilled with the tune-up on the car, and I was thrilled with the tune-up on the car. But when I set it up for me, and I set it up for just running around the area here and just having some fun with it. So I wanted something that was just like tight and go. So I had a locked out Mallory dual point distributor. This one. in there, which is actually going to be used on another build that I'm not going to talk about now, but there's a build coming this year that'll include that from one of our current cars, one of the cars that's already up and running in our fleet, but we're going to upgrade the motor. We'll build an upgraded motor for it. So, at any rate, thinking about the mission that this car is slated for, power toward this year, I said, well, highway gas mileage is going to be a primary thing. So I need a vacuum advanced distributor in there. So yesterday, I swapped out the Mallory for a 1967 single point distributor. It has a Pertronix unit in it, just because it was in there when I got the distributor, and it runs fine. I'm going to leave it together like that, and I'm going to throw a set of points in the car, in the glove compartment, just in case. But it runs good. It doesn't snap the way it did with the locked out distributor, but that's okay. It still has gobs of mid-range, and all you got to do is really just look at the gas pedal and it burns the tires. So it's a kind of thing where with traction, like on slicks or drag radial, something like that, you would definitely see a big difference between a locked out distributor and one with a curve. But as far as like regular street tires go, it'll blow the tires away with the curved distributor or with this distributor. Because I took it out and beat it up yesterday after I made the swap just to make sure everything was good. So we're going to leave that in there and send it down the highway. One other thing I noticed yesterday was when I was driving the car around, was the front end has become very unpredictable. I guess over the course of time it was sitting, one of the lower control arm bushings must have dried out to the point that it came apart. It's very loose now. So I'm going to have to go through the front end of this thing. I'll change the lower control arm bushings, the upper bushings. I think the ball joints are, one of the ball joints is new. I changed it when I first put it together. But I'll go through all of that just to make sure that the front end is good to go for road trip. It's gonna see a couple 1,000-mile road trip. Now, also comments yesterday. You guys, you drive me crazy, right? I know what I'm doing. I've been doing this stuff for a long time. So we started the car, and as you can see, obviously it was bulky getting started. The car sat for a good year and a half. Haven't touched it. So people were like, "Well, use a choke. Don't you know it's supposed to have a choke? Put a choke on it." It has a choke. It has a choke. It has a manual choke. But the reason I didn't do it is, and I explained this in a video, when starting a car that's been sitting for a long period of time, the intake manifold, the runners, the whole intake tract needs to be seasoned, right? So in other words, as the car sits, all of the passages underneath the carburetor dry out. It's just bare metal now. They get dusty. So it takes a significant amount of gasoline to wet the passages enough to re-season it for a quick start. Now what happens is if you use the choke when you're doing something like that, again, this is just when you're reviving something that's been sitting for a long period of time. If you use the choke, you will wash the plugs out. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're going to wash the plugs out. And I didn't want to bother having to go through plugs on a big block, especially a 440 and a B-body with headers. It's not a simple task. So with the choke, I did everything with the choke open and just fed it raw gas and held the throttle open so that it would go, but it wouldn't flood itself, and I didn't have to worry about washed out spark plugs. So that's the reason I did that. Yes, it has a choke. I know how to use a choke. I've used chokes. Some of you guys in the comments are pissing, but we got it running, and there you go. She's good to go. So I'm not going to spend too much more time on this car right now. The next thing I'm going to do is just get it off the ground, get the wheels off, and start assessing that damage on the rear quarter panel. That was the other thing too. A lot of people make comments, and I'm definitely going to a lot of you guys make comments on methods of repairing that are already along the lines of what I'm thinking of. I do not want to give it to somebody else to do. I want to do it myself. I think I know how I want to accomplish this. I've kind of I've worked it through in my head numerous times, and I'm pretty sure I know how it's going to go. We'll find out. But I don't want to farm it out. I don't want to give it to a body shop, or I don't want to give it to Kiwi and make it his problem or anything like that. I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to do it the way I think it's going to get done, or it'll work, and we'll go from there. So yeah, like I said, man, I'm glad you guys like this car. it has a presence. You know, there's very few cars that have the kind of presence that these things do. They're very majestic when they go down the street. You know what I'm saying? Like some cars have that, you know, that thing. These first generation Chargers have that. They're not nearly as pretty as the second gen. You know, I get that. I know that. You know, they're an acquired taste. Oh, one other thing too. This car is a 67, but at some point somebody swapped in a 66 console, and they also, you see this trim, 67 is supposed to have a light over here, right? It comes up like this, you know, but this is a 66 trim. Somebody had swapped these over. I think actually the whole fenders are probably swapped over. But that's the trim that's on here. It's 66 trim on a 67 car. So, all right, guys, that's it. I gotta go pick up a motor. I'll see you tomorrow.